Last weekend, I saw Dune Part Two in the theater. Actually, it was the third Dune movie I saw that week, starting with Dune Part One, and then the 1984 David Lynch version of Dune. So I had my Dune fill last week, um, and I did get to go see it at an IMAX theater. And even though I did not get myself a popcorn bucket, it was a thoroughly enjoyable movie. It was really good, a really good movie. I do have some critique to it. I do have some issues with it, but as an overall movie experience, very enjoyable, very enjoyable. On a rating scale, based on my nitpicks and critique of it, I give it a 7 to 8, which is still a really good movie and a lot better than everything we've seen coming out lately. Um, this tells its own story, which is really good. We don't have to worry about any political narratives or SJW type issues. Don't have to worry about any of that, which is really nice to be able to sit and enjoy a movie and not have any policies or agenda stuffed down your throat. So this is, of course, the story of Dune, based on Frank Herbert's novels, which is an epic series of novels. It's a long, long series of novels and a very deep lore. Overall, I think this does tell a good story. Um, that does get into my critique, though, over later on. But from what you see on screen, it is fantastic to look at. I mean, it is beautifully shot. There is a lot of CGI in it, but it doesn't feel like it's CGI. It really feels very natural. And seeing it in an IMAX theater, it's one of the few movies I've actually ever seen in an IMAX theater. I didn't see part one in the IMAX theater. I actually saw it at home. So seeing this in like totality of a giant screen, you really feel being on Arrakis. You get the sense of majesty and grandeur of this entire planet. It really draws you in. And not just Arrakis, but the other scenes as well. Especially the scenes on Gedi Prime, the Harkonnen homeworld, where they use a very dramatic effect of the black sun affecting how things appear that's in only black and white. That is an amazing scene. It just looks amazing. The other good things in this, besides just the visual appearance and telling a good story of what the director wants to tell, is a lot of the performances. I'm actually not a big fan of Timothy Chalamet. I don't like him that much. I don't find him to be that great. I know some people do, but he's never really appealed to me. In this, I really think he does a good job as Paul Atreides. He's actually the third actor to play Paul Atreides, the first being Kyle MacLachlan in the 1984 David Lynch version. Then there was Alec Newman. He played Paul in the sci-fi miniseries in the early 2000s. I think Timothy Chalamet encapsulates the physical appearance of Paul Atreides best, because the character of Paul Atreides is supposed to be very young. He's supposed to be 15 years old at the start of the Dune novel, start of the Dune movie. So he's like a young teen, late teen. That's what I think Timothy Chalamet looks mostly like. He's in his 20s, but he still has a very youthful appearance. So I think that works for him. And again, I didn't think he was that good in the first movie. I thought he was a little more forceful towards the end of this one. You actually got a sense of a little bit of menace from him when he finally adopted the role of Paul Atreides Muad'Dib, the Messiah, the Savior, the Fremen. So I did like that. The other great performances, Javier Bardem as Stilgar was fantastic, playing the believer, believing in the story of Muad'Dib. Josh Brolin was great, returning as Gurney Halleck. Always like a lot of Josh Brolin performances. Just a great actor. Stellan Skarsgård, try to say that 5 times fast, was great. I enjoyed him as Baron Harkonnen. He's not my favorite Baron. My favorite Baron is actually Ian McNeice in the Dune miniseries on Sci-Fi. I preferred him, but I think Stellan Skarsgård did a very good job of performing as a menacing, conniving, devious, and very bloodthirsty Baron. But when it comes to the level of bloodthirstiness, Austin Butler killed it as Fade Ruatha. I mean, he was just, you got a sense of just They called him a psychopath in the movie, and you really got the sense. He just oozed off the screen the menace. You got the sense that he was barely hinged at some times, and but at the same time very controlled in what he did and how he acted. So I think his performance was outstanding, especially the fight at the end between him and Paul Atreides. That was a very well choreographed fight scene. And even though I knew the outcome, you could almost see like, is Paul going to lose here? It was that well portrayed. Now, on the issue of performances, this ties into some of my negatives and what I didn't like. Zendaya. I've never really been a fan of Zendaya. I've seen her in a few things. The thing I most remember her from is playing MJ, not Mary Jane, Michelle Jones in the Spider-Man MCU movies. I always feel like she's just playing Zendaya, and I got that sense here. I didn't get a good sense of her and Timothée Chalamet having a real love story, which is what Paul and Chani actually have. Some people will say, well, you portrayed as a girl boss. I don't even bother with that. I don't think any of those politics come into it, because in the story itself, in the novel itself, Chani is a strong warrior. She's a strong fighter. She's a powerful fighter, and she has a significant role in the story. The role she played here was very different than I recall in the book. Mind you, I read the book about 20 years ago. But she was much more of a skeptic of Paul taking on the mantle of Muad'Dib. She was afraid she'd lose him. And that kind of ties into the changes in the story, because in the end, Paul and Chani are not together. This is where I think part of it falls flat for me, which is why I don't give it a higher ranking. I have read the story of Dune in the past. I think the miniseries does the best job of telling as much of the lore as possible. Dune is a very complex story to understand. The only way, in my opinion, to truly do it properly would be a prestige series on a streaming service, like an HBO or Apple, 10 to 12 episodes, Game of Thrones style, where you really got to understand all the politics involved, because there's that much going on. Here, there's a lot cut out, and the significant cutout for me is the time compression. Lady Jessica is pregnant with her daughter, Alia. Alia's never born. Never born in this. In the book, in the miniseries, in the first movie, Alia is born, and because she's exposed to the water of life, she rapidly ages. Here, she's never born. So from the time that House Atreides falls to the time of the end of this movie is less than 9 months. In the actual lore, it's over 2 years. So there's 2 years where Paul trains to become a Fremen, where he trains the Fremen in the weirding way, where they launch all these battles and interrupt the spice flow and endanger the Harkonnens' control over Arrakis. There's so much lost, and it's just in that story because it's all time compressed. And then without Alia being there, it takes away a significant character. Alia, in fact, is the one who kills Baron Harkonnen, not Paul Atreides like it is here. So I think the loss of Alia is very significant. I think the compression of the timeline really rushes everything, and you really feel the rush at the end of the movie. Literally 20 minutes, they wrap it up. The battle is so quick, it doesn't even seem significant. So for a 3-hour movie, you almost need another 30 or 40 minutes, which again is why I say this may be best as a prestige series rather than just a movie-going experience. Some of the other things that miss, again, this is things that a person who's read the book would notice. We don't understand the relationship between the spice and the worms. Of course, the worms are the source of the spice. We don't get that. We don't get to see anything of the Space Navigators. We don't hear about the Spacing Guild. Yes, we hear a lot about the politics between House Harkonnen and the Atreides and the Emperor, but we don't know what's going on with the Spacing Guild. They're very significant. They're very much integral to what happens when Paul becomes Emperor. And of course, speaking of, Alia not being there, another child that's not there is Paul and Chani's child. They have a child together during that 2-year period of time that was in the book and in the other movie. Well, not the first movie, but in the miniseries. That's another significant event that affects Paul, as well as to attempt to kill Lady Jessica, because he believes the Lady Jessica was responsible for House Atreides falling. He believed she was a traitor. All that goes into Paul's decisions to take the water of life and to become the Kwisatz Haderach. Those are all significant events in the overall story of Dune that are missing from this movie. That doesn't mean it's not an enjoyable experience. Again, I can nitpick it because I know the lore, I understand it. And I think someone who doesn't won't necessarily miss it. But those parts being missing for someone who understands it, it's significant, and that's why I don't rate it as high. Overall, like I say, it's a great movie. Absolutely great movie. See it in the theater. Go see it on the giant screen. Feel the worms, the sound. Feel the sound of the worms as a blaze path through the sand. You just really it envelops you. It's a great experience. Should be seen on a big screen. Like I say, 7 to 8. I would rank it. If you want to learn more about the true story of Dune, the full story of Dune, read the novel. It is a dense read. Also, watch the miniseries. That's also a pretty good show as well. Go even see the 1984 movie. There's some weird stuff in there. The fact that everyone can use the weirding way, and they use voice modulators to project voice as basically a verbal attack weapon. I don't know where David Lynch got that from, but I guess he thought it would be cool effects. Like I say, there's a lot out there to go see. Dune Part 3, I'm very interested to see if it gets made. Early stages, it sounds like it could happen. How the changes in the story will affect the future, which is based on, presumably, I think Dune Messiah is the next book. So again, I encourage you to go see it. Questions, comments, witticisms down below. Click like, click subscribe, click share. See y'all later.
A war in my name!